Okay, welcome back everyone. Hope you got some interesting chat in the breakout rooms. I was enjoying what I heard very much. That was sadly our last panel, but don't forget you can revisit all of the 2022 trends and our experts' insights in the ebook, which is now live online, and the link is in the chat here as well. I'm really sorry to say that this actually takes us on to our final session of our Loyalty Connect conference. It's our last Ask Me Anything. So I'm really pleased to welcome Jordan, Will, and Jason from Loyalty Line, who will be taken to the stage to answer the questions that have come in via the chat since our last AMA. We'll start with the questions that have been upvoted the most and then go from there. So guys, over to you for our last session.
Thanks, Fee. Welcome everyone to the second Loyalty Marketing Ask Me Anything session. So as Fiona said, I'm Jordan Borshelli. I'm the Tech Partnerships Manager at Loyalty Line. And joining me today will be Jason Leader, who is the Strategic Customer Success Manager, and Will Ford, who is a Director of Sales at Loyalty Line. So thank you everyone for sharing your questions in the Q&A. If you haven't yet, now's your chance. And if there's already a question that's been submitted that you really want answered, just be sure to give it a little thumbs up and we'll make sure to prioritize it. So guys, without further ado, let's get started. I want to start with a question that was submitted by Alex. And Alex is asking about UGC and is there a less manual way that brands can tie UGC back into their shopping platforms? Jason, do you kind of kick us off here on some sort of tactical ways that you've seen merchants do that?
Yeah, of course. So first thing that you'll kind of want to look at when you do want UGC is obviously identifying what type of UGC you're after. So if you do want to capture a certain demographic, if you do want to get a certain kind of feel to that UGC, it's better to ask your customers like what you want. So actually give them some tips, give them some guidelines, and kind of just set a frame so they know what they can produce. Obviously, if you give them free range, you'll have ton of UGC, but not all of it might be applicable. So if you put some kind of guidelines in place, then you might get obviously more usable UGC.
Yeah, I think just on top of that as well, especially when we focus on the kind of loyalty aspect and loyalty programs, actually getting that UGC in the first place can be perceived as being quite tough for brands, and actually building UGC into different touch points within that customer journey. So whether you're prompting them during a review or whether you're encouraging them to do UGC and to sort of submit UGC as part of a loyalty program, I've seen that kind of be quite strong tactics for kind of generating that content as well. Cool. So next question is around luxury brands. And so an unknown participant has put in, I'm seeing a few luxury brands implement loyalty programs. Do you see loyalty becoming an important part of the luxury market? Will, do you want to take us away on this one?
Yeah, sure. Simple answer to that is yes. I mean, the luxury space is definitely a very competitive market. If you look at some of the big players in the space, the LVMHs, the Richemonts, they are spending huge amounts of money on acquisition. To compete with them, you've got to have a huge budget, or you need to find other ways of engaging with customers. So I definitely see loyalty as a way of engaging with other with new customers. You can get new customers through referrals, creating advocates, kind of spreading or getting on social and getting like an organic shares. But then that all kind of comes back to retaining those customers that you're acquiring, so you're not hemorrhaging money trying to compete with those big businesses.
Interestingly, when it comes to luxury as well, I think there's a sort of, as the kind of question suggests, there's a bit of a kind of perception that luxury brands can't do kind of loyalty. And the only way we've really seen this in the market, if we think about really old kind of loyalty strategies, are the Harrods and the Selfridges and that kind of like store credit card almost. But as you were kind of mentioning about engaging with other customers, we're starting to see more luxury brands doing a more value content-led approach to loyalty, where they're sort of getting their customers to really buy into the brand, stay with them, earn their kind of loyalty points, get into the more premium tiers, and then they're offering experiential benefits back, whether it's shopping styling sessions, or whether it's expedited delivery, all of those kind of things as well. So I think that's definitely a real key part. Jason, what are your thoughts? Oh, sorry,
I
Will.
was just going to get back to the questions where you say the question was, I'm seeing a few luxury brands implementing loyalty programs these days. And I think that kind of, again, goes back to the fact that luxury brands are recognizing that they can't just live off a brand anymore. They need to be creative. They need to find other ways to engage their customers and to acquire new ones. And that kind of, again, leads into what you were saying, Jordan.
Yeah, I'm very much on that point. Even though the products may be different, and that's what sets luxury brands apart, the customer journey, again, needs to be different as well. So if a luxury brand does have a loyalty program in place, that could be something that sets them apart from a market that is becoming a little bit more saturated lately. So having that kind of positive customer journey after the initial purchase and after people have come to that site and you've acquired that new customer, that is what could set them apart.
Cool. We've got a question here from Rhiannon. Again, still kind of on the UGC piece here. Rhiannon says, typically our UGC is all from the same demographic. In order to be inclusive and show a diverse range of imagery, how can we best diversify UGC without going out and specifically targeting? I think I'll kind of start with this one because it's a very interesting topic. For a lot of brands, you've obviously got your ideal kind of customer, and they often sit within the same kind of demographic. And this is quite an interesting challenge that a lot of old school retailers have been trying to break. I was speaking to a brand over a year ago, and they had this very old traditional demographic, and they wanted to sort of get young, fresher kind of audiences and customers through. And they had this exact problem. Whilst they understood that sort of the 80% of those customers sat within that same demographic, they also knew that there was this 20% that sat without it, sat outside of it, and really not targeting them, but actually educating those customers that there is value if they do submit UGC and show their products and their experiences in sort of forms of photos and videos, was a really great way for them to actually understand, okay, we have this smaller, non-traditional or non-majority demographic, and actually get them into not just marketing imaging, but actually marketing strategy as well. There's a great example of where Harley Davidson wanted to rebrand and go after a much younger audience. And one of the sort of tactics they did is actually spoke to younger customers of theirs, and that shaped their whole marketing strategy. And apparently they're doing pretty well from that. Will or Jason, has this kind of come up with any of your calls with merchants?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that we do try and put an emphasis on is accessibility. So obviously there will be demographics that maybe don't traditionally take the same approach to UGC reviews, and that's mainly how it's worded or how it's presented. So obviously if you can change that approach and make it more accessible to those demographics and make it more visible to them, then you can really shine a light on the information that you're getting back from them, and in turn use that information to maybe, if you do want to go after those certain demographics in the future, then you've got some good data there and you kind of know where to start. So yeah, I'd say first part is make those different channels probably more accessible to the demographics that you've got in mind.
I think on top of that, more tactically as well, is collect UGC at every touch point. I know I mentioned UGC and reviews when we were answering the sort of first question, but that is often something which is overlooked by brands. There are some amazing review platforms out there now where they actively encourage customers to leave a photo, leave a video, all of this kind of stuff. And when we're talking about the kind of on-site experience, that customer's already said or suggested that they're going to spend a couple of minutes to help you, the brand, and sort of share their experience. So yeah, I think that's something to kind of keep in mind. Okay, next question from Fernando is, to be well managed and executed, how much time should we give to this loyalty program? Should we have someone fully dedicated, or is it just a couple of hours a day? What's your recommendation? Jason, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, you work day in, day out with sort of brands, so I think you're probably the most insightful here.
I mean, from being from onboard, and then yeah, maybe I'm a little bit biased in the spend lots of time in there, but it really depends on where you're at in that life cycle and what you want to get from that. So if it's a case of you just starting with your loyalty program, obviously go in there, try and get as much data as you can. But if you've had your loyalty program for a little while, maybe you can be a little bit more focused. What do you want from the loyalty program? Do you want feedback? Do you want reviews? What do you want to check on? So when you do obviously go further down the line with your loyalty program, it's been active, you've got over the onboard and hump, then you can really just kind of start looking, where do I want to focus? What benefits do I want to include? What metrics am I going to be tackling in the next month, in the next quarter, in the next year? And how am I going to set myself up to success? So really, depending on your scope, it might take a full person, it might take a couple of hours. It is totally up to you and how kind of grand your plans are there.
Yeah, we work with a lot of e-commerce agencies in the space, and some of the best kind of insight that they've given us is test quarterly. Try something new. Really review your program on a quarterly basis, even if the rest of the time it ticks away in the background, because it's loyalty programs can be kind of very low resource to kind of run, because they run through platforms like LoyaltyLine. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to look at it as well, is spend a little bit of time every quarter and just test new ideas, see what works.
I think one of the things to add on that as well is it kind of depends on how mature you are as a business. If you're a small startup and you've got one person wearing many hats, then it's probably not going to be possible to invest a lot of time into just managing a loyalty program. But on the other side, if you're a massively diversified marketing organization where you've got specialized roles looking into loyalty, digital e-commerce, all that kind of stuff, then it would make sense to have someone focus on that. But the thing that is really key is to not look at it in isolation. Like, you need to look at the whole journey. You need to look at everything you're doing in marketing and tie it all together. You can bring on a loyalty program and thinking, we've got a loyalty program now, this is going to solve some problems, and just having it there, letting it tick along. It's not going to work. You need to make sure it's tied into the rest of your marketing activity, customer journey. And that's how you'll get the most value out of it.
Yeah, just on that point as well, if you do that, obviously, your loyalty program grows stagnant. Obviously, you're losing an opportunity to then go to your customers, be like, look, here's like a new evolution of your loyalty program. So having those tweaks and using your customer feedback and using your loyal customer feedback, so the ones that do hold accounts, taking that feedback to heart and kind of going through it. And making those small little tweaks every quarter, it gives you another opportunity to go out to your loyal customers and be like, hey, look, we've listened to your feedback. This is what we're implementing, or this is what we're changing. And then, it's another conversation that you can have, and you can start building those personal connections with your customers.
One more thing I wanted to say about that, because I think, Will, you hit the nail on the head there around it's not just a loyalty program, and that it should stretch out into your wider kind of marketing strategy and tech stack. I mean, I'm biased because I kind of work with our tech partners and the integrations that we have. But if you start to see loyalty as this intangible value, brand value that you're communicating to your customers, it really should be intertwined into every touch point, every message, every tactic, every channel. Completely.
Well, I think that's the thing, is like a loyalty program independently, if that's the only thing you're doing, it's still going to be powerful, but the power of the program is exponentially increased the more you tie it in with the other tools. If you're using Klaviyo and adding flows, or or OmniAttend, or any kind of ESP, or you're using reviews, if you're tying that whole thing together, rewarding people for the right actions, you'll be growing your brand, you'll be growing your business, you'll be growing your acquisition channels, but also creating more engaged, more valuable customers.
This actually ties quite nicely into the next question we've got. So Rhiannon has asked, what are some good tactics, minus discounting, to incentivize continued subscriptions? She's given a little bit of context and said that we often see churn at around the third order and would like to reward but not keep resorting to kind of money off, which is a very interesting point, because it kind of goes back into that point that we've made before, which is, a loyalty program isn't just customers spend money on and get points and then they get money off. It's more around building, well, two things really. It's more around using a loyalty program as the incentivization engine to get customers to do actions that are going to be generally valuable to you as a brand, whether it's leaving reviews, whether it's referring friends, whether it's following that brand on different channels. And so the second part to that is those rewards aren't just a way for you to give them a discount, but it's an opportunity for you to either build a relationship with that customer, whether you're giving the ability to spend their points on supporting a charity that the brand supports, or an environmental initiative. And when it comes to that specific subscription model, one of the best tactics that I've seen are giving product samples at potentially the third order. So whilst that customer, maybe it is a sort of beauty product, is receiving that third order, in that third order, give them the ability to claim a sample into a different type of category. What you're doing there is you're giving them perceived value, which actually may be way cheaper than the £10 or $10 off they would have received in the form of a discount. But they're also getting a little bit of insight into the other products that brand has to offer, and maybe they'll actually enjoy the sample and add that to their subscription model as well. Appreciate I've pretty much just ranted and answered a lot of that question, but Will, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we in the sales team we talk to a lot of subscription businesses, and it's a very typical problem. Churn. Typically people see a cliff at second or third purchase. Subscribers always drop off, and one really good way that I've seen of combating this is you can use a hidden tiering system, so that when people reach that second or third purchase, you could give them access to further SKUs, kind of similar to what you're saying, Jordan, about giving free products. You could open up further SKUs, you could open up benefits to them that isn't just a discount. It could be getting them involved in, again, kind of community stuff you can open up. I know we've done the plant a tree thing, and people love that. If you open up other benefits to them once they hit those different tiers. But again, keep that hidden, so they're not seeing there's this tiering system, but then that'll encourage them to get past that second, third, fourth, fifth purchase, whatever your kind of cliff edge sits at.
Will, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but it's actually quite amazing when you look at the subscription model and a loyalty program, because I don't know which one of us said this, but it's that kind of business model is one of the only times that the customer's definitely going to come back and make a second purchase. So I think that can really helps with that whole initiative to push to second, fourth, fifth, nth, and onwards.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you were to offer up a points balance for each purchase that then equated to, again, high margin products you can offer for free, that you would accrue the points balance for after that second or third purchase, and you can build that into an ESP flow to say you're one purchase away from getting these products or one of these products. It works really, really well. And subscription businesses, from what we've seen, are massively successful with loyalty programs, like much more so than typical retailers.
Jason, do you have any other kind of stories or insight from working with your clients?
Yeah, I think some of the strategies obviously I've mentioned. So if you've identified that's kind of where customer drop-off point is, motivation for the customer is maybe a little bit lower at that stage, then introducing a couple of maybe Klaviyo flows, just checking up on the customer, make sure they feel heard. And it's kind of that community versus customer feel. Like, do you want them to just come back and buy, or do you want them to feel like they're part of, a community, get them involved in other things around purchasing, getting them doing reviews, getting them, maybe doing some more educational pieces. That's some of the stuff that I have talked about with merchants in the past, just so they can stay within the community, and then they'll realize that they prefer yourself, and obviously continue that subscription.
One thing as well, which we don't really talk about, Rhiannon, I'm not sure if this answers your question or we're taking a little bit further, but actually after they end their subscription, what happens? What does life look like for a customer then? That could be a great opportunity to actually, if you are a merchant with multiple product catalogs and that particular product they didn't like, or it wasn't suitable for them, what does the flow look like after that? Do you reach out to them? Do you say, hey, I know that didn't work for you, but what about this? And not to kind of push on this kind of discount piece, but if you could get customers into a different kind of product subscription line, how would you do that? Is it free sampling? Is it a discount, which is a little bit of a kind of not the best way, but sometimes can work. So I think about thinking around what happens after they do churn as well is really important. Cool. Let's move on to another question. We've got quite a few that have come in throughout the day. How do I find out what would make my community more passionate about my brand? Jason, do you want to kind of lead on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing to kind of do there is ask them, get involved, talk to the community, talk to your customers, what would they like to see, what are their current feelings, and talk to the promoters, the detractors, everyone in between, just to get a full picture of how everyone feels about your brand. That way you kind of know if you are going to take any directions, if you want to go in one way, in one kind of strategy, then you kind of know what are the main points that they want to see, and what would get them more involved. So really about forming that personal connection and making that relationship a little bit stronger.
I would add to that as well. We were working with a brand a couple of years ago, and they had this really strong community within their customer base. And what they would actually do, they sold sort of luxury handbags for women, is they would speak to their customers. They would speak to their top 5%, and they would ask them, why do you like this brand so much you keep coming back? Beyond just that, they would invite them to kind of events and all of this kind of stuff. But the idea that they've reached out to their customers and said, hey, you are really passionate about my brand, why are you passionate about it, is a really strong tactic. And I think a lot of D2C brands, they kind of look at them as a company and the customers, and there's this sort of abstraction, where in most businesses, they do speak to their customers. They do get that kind of qualitative feedback. And that was a really interesting tactic and strategy they did. Speak to your customers, send them a personal direct email, say, hey, we work on the marketing team. We really want to find out a little bit more around your relationship with our X brand, and maybe give them a little sort of incentive, whether it's 40 points or something else, to get them on that call in the first place. So that's a really interesting strategy that I've sort of come across as well.
Tying into that as well, Jordan, I was speaking to a business the other day that they produce an edible health product that it's healthy, so it doesn't taste particularly nice. And they run a subscription, a mainly subscription business, obviously have one-time purchases as well. And we were talking exactly around that third purchase cliff and relating that back to a highly engaged group of customers who are, if they get past that second, third purchase, they're there for a minimum of 12. And they were saying, how do we go and get our customers who are churning, who are dropping off, how do we get them to be more involved, and how do we do that? And the answer again was go and talk to them, and they spend a lot of time going out, speaking to their customers, figuring out what it was that made them drop off. And it was for them, it was the flavor of their product, and so they've added another like 3 SKUs that were additional flavors from the feedback of the customers that dropped off. And then they've sent those people a load of free products to bring them back into a subscription. So that's a really good way of putting subscribers back as well.
Yeah, I love that. It's especially when you look at the kind of repeat purchase kind of funnel and metrics, and then you think, what is it? What is it that got those people across and didn't get those people? That's really good. We are coming up to time, guys. So thank you very much for answering some of those questions, and apologies if we didn't get around to answering your questions. Do remember that we do have a pop-up on the Loyalty Lion website at loyaltylion.com where you can ask more questions. Thank you everyone for listening, and I think I'm passing back to Fiona.
Yes, you are. Thank you so much, Jordan, Will, and Jason, for taking us through the rest of today's questions. Really great tips and insights there. My video seems to have frozen. I don't know if that's how interesting. Oh, well, it worked for most of the day. We'll just carry on. So yeah, that's it. I'm afraid I'm going to call time on our first Loyalty Connect conference. It's been such a fantastic day, and I wish that we didn't have to bring it to a close. There are so many people to thank for today's event. I won't try to name them all, as I would undoubtedly miss someone, but please do join me in a virtual round of applause for Chris Field, our keynote speaker, for each of our key e-commerce expert panelists from the leading technologies in our space, and to every member of the Loyalty Lion team who gave up their time to help us learn and grow today as well. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to all of you who dialed in and made today the success that it's been. If you missed any of the sessions or you want to revisit them or share them with your team, then stay tuned for the recordings, which will be hitting your inbox in the next couple of days. We will be sharing a post-event feedback survey, and we welcome any comments that you have. We want to make this event bigger and better next time round. In the meantime, you can connect with Loyalty Lion and follow our Loyalty News on any of our social channels or via our newsletter, which you'll find at loyaltylion.com. So all that is left for me is to say good luck